and welcome to this episode of the Skift Meetings podcast, the podcast for curious event professionals. My name is Andrea Doyle, and I am the executive editor of Skift Meetings. In this episode entitled Career Goal, the Events Industry, I have the pleasure of chatting with Ronny Coombs, the exhibits manager for the American Society of Nephrology. We discuss things including what it's like being part of 8 Kidney Weeks, the impact AI has on her and the industry as a whole, the shift towards sustainability, how Taylor Swift has impacted her as an event planner, the importance of mentors in her career, and how time management and being flexible has helped her in the industry. I hope you enjoy listening to this episode, and you could find other Skift Meetings podcast episodes on our website or by subscribing to your favorite podcast channel.
Detroit has always been America's assembly line of creativity and innovation. It's home to groundbreakers, movers and shakers, the next generation that will change the nation. Bring your meeting to Detroit, then take it all in. Award-winning dining, a captivating live music scene, and world-class outdoor spaces like America's top Riverwalk as ranked by USA Today. This is your invitation to join America's true originals. Plan your meeting in Detroit. Get started at visitdetroit.com.
I'm Ronny Coombs. I am the exhibits manager at the American Society of Nephrology. So I deal with the trade show sales and logistics for Kidney Week.
And can you tell us a little bit about Kidney Week?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Kidney Week is it's a medical conference. Obviously, we get 12 to 14,000 attendees. We have about 170 to 200 exhibitors every year. And I deal with mainly just the trade show portion. So sales to those exhibitors and all of the logistics for the trade show floor.
And is it held in different destinations each year?
Yeah, we pop around. Last year we were in Philly and previous to that Orlando. So basically any city that can hold a citywide of 12 to 14,000 people.
And it's always in the continental United States?
Pretty much, yeah. I think there may have been many years ago, a year where we were in Canada. So that, but pretty much always in North America, yeah.
And it's a true citywide, so that must be
Yeah.
a challenge.
Oh, yes. I mean, and thankfully I don't have to deal with this part of it, but there are some cities where we're in 40 or more hotels just to get the room block inventory that we need.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So I'm interested in learning about your journey as an event professional.
Yeah, we had a chance to talk about this a little bit, and this is one of my favorite things to talk about because you hear a lot in our industry that people kind of stumbled into events. It's not typically an intentional thing, but I've known I wanted to do events my whole life. I planned our senior prom. Like I've always been into events, and when I went to college, I learned there was like an event management degree that you could get. So I kind of jumped right on that my freshman year and ended up doing the 4-year program at George Mason to get my event management degree. And about 6 months before I graduated, I got my first job doing conference planning for a citywide. Actually, it was a smaller one for a career and technical student organization. I don't know if you're familiar, but I started there, and then maybe a year and a half later, I got my first job with ASN. So that was in 2015, so a long time ago. And I have been with them pretty much ever since, except for a short hiatus that I took when I went to do corporate events in Atlanta.
And
Yeah.
so you mentioned Kidney Week. How many other events are you involved with for the association?
I just do Kidney Week. So because I do the trade show portion of the event, I'm doing just the Kidney Week exhibit hall. ASN itself has a ton of other small to mid-sized meetings that take place, all mostly domestically. We have a couple of highlights that we do internationally, but I don't work on any of those. I'm just the trade show for Kidney Week itself. Yeah.
How do you explain to friends and family what you do?
That's a fun question. Um, it's hard to do because, not a lot of people understand the events industry as a whole, and I work in such a niche part of it doing the trade show for a medical meeting. So I usually just start super generic. I just start with, "I'm an event planner," and then if they wanna know more, if they ask me, like, "What does that mean?" or "What kind of events?" I'll tell them, "Oh, I do a medical event." And then if they keep digging, instead of trying to explain to someone who has no idea what a trade show is, I'll just try to focus on like the scope of the meeting. So I'll say, it's, we get about 13,000 people come to a city, they're doctors and they're nurses and they're there to maintain their board certification. And I work with the pharmaceutical companies who want to network and have conversations with those people. And then I kind of usually leave it there.
And is there an event that you've organized that you're most proud of?
Well, so I have done, social events, corporate events, but primarily in my career, I've worked on Kidney Week. So I've done 8 Kidney Weeks, and I think the Kidney Week specifically that I'm most proud of is the 2019 year. Probably not for reasons that you would expect, but 2019 was a really tough year for us because it was a banner year. So it was amazing. We had really high registration, the biggest exhibit hall that we've ever had, ton of corporate support and things to execute. It was fantastic. But we were short staffed that year. Um, we lost a member of our team, Seal Fogarty, which I think a lot of people, that name will sound familiar to them. She had been our vice president of events, and we lost her. Um, she passed away. So that was a really tough year. You know, just trying to execute that event. Uh, and I was really proud of it at the end of the day. It came off really well. So I think just emotionally after that event, I had a lot of pride.
And then that was right before the pandemic. How did the pandemic impact Kidney Week?
Oh goodness. Yeah. So we had to pivot obviously to virtual. We didn't cancel our events. We just canceled the in-person portion because obviously doctors still need their education and research was still happening. We still needed to have an event. We had our first virtual event in November of 2020, and that was difficult in a whole other way, which I think a lot of event planners will sympathize with. Was it, just trying to learn how to suddenly become a technology expert and a user experience designer and all these other things that I had never had to do before. We really lucked out. I mean, our event went off really well. We had good attendance and uh, we heard good feedback from it. So we were happy about that. But yeah, it's just a whole other different kind of difficult. It was a rough couple of years for everybody in our industry, really.
Right.
I was fortunate to have been able to, keep my job and still have work to do. So I didn't take that for granted at the time, but there was a lot of stress through it.
When did you get back to in person?
So 2022. So 2020 and 21 were both virtual events. And then in 22 in Orlando was our first in-person event.
And was attendance where it was in 2019 or still down?
Well, we did a hybrid event that year. So if you look at the attendance overall, yeah, it was about the same. The in-person attendance was a little lower. Frankly, what we saw we were experiencing an attrition in attendance with was international attendance. The people just simply weren't able to travel here. Otherwise, we had it was, we had a really good showing that year, good attendance and good exhibit hall as well. So
And last year, are your numbers back to where they were?
almost, not quite. We're still a little low, but again, it's just in international attendance. Like we're normally on the high 40% of international, and right now we're finding ourselves kind of on the high 30s. So yeah, that's I think not necessarily a hangover from the pandemic and has a lot to do with visa issues right now and just difficulty kind of getting into the country. There was a really interesting session at the most recent destination show, or it's just Showcase now at Showcase, that talked about some of the those legal things and the way our industry is trying to address them to make it a little bit easier for people to get visas. The wait times right now are just, it's prohibitive. People can't get here.
Is there any takeaway from the pandemic? I mean, you went totally virtual that you would like to share?
Oh yeah. I think COVID, obviously it impacted so many things, personally and professionally. One of my biggest takeaways is there's not really a replacement for in-person events. We can do the virtual events, and the doctors were able to get on there and watch the sessions and still get their certifications. But we found attendance at the virtual sessions was really low, whereas in person, we have rooms overflowing. We found the doctors didn't like it as much. We asked them, "Hey, what do you think of this? Do we need to keep doing a hybrid event?" And they were all like, "We just want to be in person." So watching our industry recover from COVID over the last few years has been, I think, kind of really inspiring for me. I know that we're kind of still struggling everywhere to fill spots that are left open by people who retired or were furloughed, or all of the many of us that went to do real estate or whatever other industry sales that they pivoted to. But to me, it just puts an even bigger spotlight on how important in-person events and the people in the events are. So I think it could have been something that was really difficult uh, to process and come through. But that's my silver lining: is, hey, look, we're really important.
And is workforce an issue still for your association?
Yes and no. I'm really fortunate. I'll start with saying that. I'm so fortunate. We have a wonderful team. We have had to hire. We hired one person during the pandemic, and we had a difficult time finding something. And I know on our end it was difficult finding them. So I know it's still an issue in our industry. I am specifically really lucky that I haven't been terribly impacted by it.
Let's look at the industry's future. What are you most excited about?
Oh, goodness. Okay. What am I most excited about in the industry? I think seeing where technology is going right now, seeing AI specifically, but a ton of other places where technology just continues to grow. If you look at where we were as a society 60 years ago versus today, and what that will look like, over the next 20 or 30 years, the growth that'll happen. I think it's fun to watch, and I'm excited to be a part of it. I've enjoyed specifically the impact that AI has had on our industry, but also just me. I love if I wind up in a spot where I'm struggling to figure out what to do next, or just a brain block, I can just go type something into Chat GPT, or PCMA has a really fantastic variation of that as well, and it'll help pull me back or jumpstart me. So I'm excited to see where that goes and the further impact that it has, yeah, on our industry.
So AI has helped you do your job.
Oh goodness, yeah, absolutely. I've used it to. I'm not great at writing marketing copy, and I have to do that a lot for the sales side of what I do. So I use it for that specifically. And like I said, I use it if I'm just in a spot where I'm like, ugh, I just cannot. I'm just blocked here. Um, I I will say the one thing about AI Chat GPT specifically is I've never gotten something out of it that I didn't have to then take and edit.
Mm.
So, I think a lot of people, oh no, is it going to replace? It can't. No, it's not going to replace us. But it is a really good space for inspiration. And that's how I typically use it.
And then you add your voice to that copy.
Oh yeah, because it doesn't talk like me at all. It does a really terrible job of talking like a human. Anytime I get something that's been written by AI, I can pinpoint immediately. I'm like, yeah, the session description was written by Chat GPT. So I always have to take something and edit or adjust. What I find more often than not is I really just will pick a few, like, oh, I like that word choice or the way that sentence is structured, and I'll take that out and add it to what I was already doing, rather than using the text as the basis and editing it. It's like I said, just great inspiration.
Any other future trends you're excited about?
Oh, you know, I'm seeing a bigger shift towards sustainability right now, which has been going on in our industry for the past, 10 years or so, but slowed down a lot during the pandemic, because we were all rightfully concerned about hygiene and making sure people didn't get sick. But I love going into an event and seeing all of the stuff made out of recycled materials, and that we're all trying to shift toward using less disposable, whether it's, big giant vinyl banners or utensils, whatever it is. So I'm really happy to see that shift. It's super important to me, I think, in my personal and professional life, that I'm being cognizant of the health of our planet. And so, yeah, I'm really lucky to have a team behind me that's supporting me in that journey. And I love seeing what all of the other associations are doing to kind of bolster their sustainability. That's a trend I'm excited about.
Are you ready to celebrate your successes in the world of meetings and events? The Skift Meetings Awards are back for 2024, recognizing the most innovative business events companies across 15 categories, and we want you to be a part of it. Winners will feature on Skift Meetings, sending a clear signal to events professionals around the world that these are partners they can rely on. The final deadline for submissions is June 11th. We encourage you to start your submission today to secure the best entry rates. For more information and to start your submission, head to live.skift.com.
Have you been to a recent event where, sustainability was at the forefront and it impressed you?
If I answer that question honestly, I think the answer is no. I see little pockets of it, at Showcase, for example, which I'll reference again just because it was the most recent event I attended. They had that great fill it forward where you could get the bottle rather than handing out bottled water everywhere. I love to see that. There are little pockets of it in every event that I attend, but I have not attended one where I was like, you know what? This conference was not about sustainability, but sustainability was the forefront. And but I'd like to see more of that.
Have you brought any sustainability initiatives into Kidney Week?
We're working on it. Yeah. We're trying to we've shifted toward more sustainable materials, whether that means they're recyclable or reusable for a lot of our activations, our corporate support banners, things like that. We're also, one thing paying a lot of attention to is trying to ship less. So fewer trucks, fewer weight. So we're printing less, moving much more toward reliant on the mobile app. So yes, we are making that effort. I do still think we have a long way to go. I mean, I think the truth is I don't necessarily have the answers on how to get there. I just know that we need to get there. And I'm happy to see that it's a focus for a lot of different people. I mean, I would love to hear what some of the listeners of the podcast or Skift have to say about it, any feedback, because I think it should be a priority.
If you were planning an event for 100 Ronnies, what would that event look like? It would be
This is
sustainability focused, right?
this is a really fun question. Okay, wait, Andrea, picture this. So there's 100 of me and one Taylor Swift. Okay, joking aside, I think something that's really critical for me in events is just that things are intentional, intuitive, and ease of use. So when I say that, I'm talking about everything from step one, like, something that can be frustrating when you're attending an event, right? Is when you can't figure out, wait, what am I supposed to register for? What is included in this? Or when you get on site, I can't find this, or I don't. Ease of use, I like everything from like the reg site, the mobile app, the flow of the event, like just intuitive and easy to navigate. That being said, I think really early on in my career, I would find myself critiquing other people's events a lot. Like you attend an event and you're like, oh, I would have done this differently. 10 years later, not a word for me. I am impressed and humbled by every event that I go to because I know all of the moving parts, all of the balls in the air that take to get there.
And so you're a Taylor Swift fan?
Oh yeah. Big Taylor Swift fan.
Have you learned anything from her that has helped you in your career?
That is such a fantastic question. And yeah, I mean, I've been a Taylor Swift fan since I was 15 years old. And anyone who knows me well will laugh when they hear this part of the podcast, like, oh, she would find a way to bring Taylor Swift into this. Um, but I admire her tenacity so much, her refusal to accept, being shut down or being told this is the way that things are going to be. She's such a strong, willful individual. And she really just doesn't allow herself to be muted by whether it's other people inside her industry or people who just like to have a voice on things. So I've taken that a lot into my life, where in moments where I may have stayed quiet or, allowed someone else to make a decision for me, where I will speak up and say, I think I know. So yeah, I've got a lot of admiration for her.
I recently wrote a story about her expertise at creating a community, and that applies to meetings and events as well.
Oh yeah. She's incredible. When you look at her fan base, the things that she's done, she's really good at making people feel special. And that is something another thing that I've taken in and tried to emulate in the events that I plan and also in my personal life is I think it's really important to make every person, whether it's in an interaction or it's on a grander scale, some big general session, 5,000 people, you have to make every person there feel important. This is for you. And yeah, I think she's fantastic at that. I'd love to read that story.
I'll send it to you. What's your favorite Taylor Swift song?
That's a terrible question. How are you supposed to answer that?
All right. You like them all.
Yeah, probably the 10-minute version of Red. I love that song. Yeah.
So, if you could change one thing in the events industry, what would that be?
I could change one thing. I mean, we kind of talked about this earlier,
Okay.
but I really think I want to see a bigger push towards sustainability. I want to see that becoming a focus at events where and I'm seeing it a lot in Europe right now, which I'm loving, and I know that will kind of eke its way over here, but just to see it becoming not just something that we're doing to say, hey, look, we're a sustainable event, but it's just the norm. It would be wrong not to be, and that's what I want to see.
How do you see events changing in the next 5 years?
Um, got some discomfort around this because a lot of people are talking about a potential economic downturn, and I find that things like that tend to impact our industry first. So whether it's a pandemic, whether it's the economy or a terrorist event or something like anything like that has this massive impact on society impacts the events industry first, and we are the last to recover. And so I think I have some trepidation around it, and maybe that's just the pessimist in me. um, but I also know, society is cyclical. So there are like periods of war, periods of peace, periods of economic, growth and recessions and whatever else. So I think in the next few years or so, I hope that I see what I know is a really strong industry um, come out on the other side of whatever this uncertainty is.
What people or organizations have you learned from or partnered with that have been key in your career?
So I was telling you earlier, I'm one of those lucky people who got to go to school for event planning. And my senior year, during a senior seminar class, I went in and we had a guest speaker that day, and she stood up and talked about her experience in the event industry and said, if anybody here wants some career advice or just to sit down and have lunch, please come grab my business card. And I had been wowed by her just listening to her talk. And I was like, I want to be her in a few years. Like, I really want that. So I walked right up and I shook her hand and I took her business card. And that was Vicki Johnson of Vicki Johnson and Associates. She's on the board of PCMA. She's really well known in the industry. And I was so lucky that she stood by her word. We went out to lunch. We wound up, she became my mentor, especially early in my career, but even now, anytime we see each other at events. And she's actually the one who got me my first job. So she introduced me very intentionally, knowing that someone was hiring for an associate for meetings for a citywide, which was what I wanted to do. And she introduced me, and if it wasn't for that, I don't know what trajectory my career would have taken. So shout out Vicky Johnson, just absolutely irreplaceable relationship in my career.
That's wonderful. And what is your degree in event planning?
Yeah, it's in the official degree at George Mason is called tourism and event management, and then you can do a further concentration, whether it's like in sports or hospitality or I forget all of the options, but my concentration was in event management. So, when you have to take an econ course, my econ course was focused towards on events specifically, stuff like that.
That's interesting. What
Yeah,
are
it's a fantastic program, honestly, and I have seen so many of my classmates come out of that program, and I mean worked for the Make-A-Wish Foundation on big giant award shows that you'd be familiar with on um just on for the New York Times, like really impactful stuff. And yeah, I feel so fortunate to have found that degree field, and
that's wonderful.
yeah, thank you.
What are the key qualities or skills that have enabled you to be successful?
Okay, this is gonna sound a bit cliche, I think. This is like when you're in a job interview and they ask you, so what is your biggest strength? What is your biggest weakness? But I think one, time management. You cannot excel in this industry if we're juggling so many things and have so much in the air all at once that you really have to be able to manage your time well. And then this is something when I came into the industry, I was not good at this at all. Flexibility. So this is something that I have grown and developed over the past 10 years or so, learning how to change on the fly, on how to let go of a plan and embrace a new one. So yeah, my flexibility now I would say is this, and I find that's common, right? That a lot of times whatever was a weakness can become a huge strength because you find yourself focusing on it. So yeah, probably that.
Is there anything that keeps you up at night?
Well, we talked a little bit earlier about I'm terrified of what's going to happen to the economy. I think that's just something that I think about a lot right now. I wouldn't say it necessarily keeps me up at night because, like I said, if there's one thing that I know, it's that we're going to rebound, and that's as a society and as an industry. So it doesn't necessarily keep me up, but I do think about it a lot.
And, event planning is stressful. Is stress a challenge for you, and how do you deal with it?
I I think in any position like mine where you're like on the front lines of so many moving parts, there's going to be some stress, right? But I again am one of those really fortunate people. I have this incredible team behind me. I have a couple of coordinators who report to me, and then I report to my senior director and my senior VP. And I'm in this really beautiful place right in the middle of the sandwich where I have support coming from all sides. And, I've got a really good foothold in the industry, just really quality people around me. So I definitely think stress has been a challenge at times. Not necessarily because of the industry, but because of who I am as a person. I'm very type A. But yeah, not right now, yeah.
And do you belong to industry associations, and how have they helped you in your career path?
Oh, yeah. So I'm on the board for the PCMA Southeast chapter. I joined PCMA when I was still in college and started attending events there, with Vicki Johnson, actually. So she's the one who got me into that. I've also, at times in my career, when I was doing corporate events, belonged to MPI and Site. I have met some of the most fantastic, wonderful people through these. And now that I'm an exhibits manager, where my primary focus is on the trade show side, I am really involved in IAEE. So that's where a lot of my time and focus goes right now in terms of professional development. I really don't know what I would do without it. I got my CEM this past year, And that was such a fun journey. I met so many fantastic people. Uh, yeah, I honestly, I really value those experiences.
What is one of your proudest accomplishments?
Oh, that's a big question. I guess I'm just kind of proud of my career as a whole. I did not grow up in an environment where you would have anticipated me kind of getting into an industry like this. And yeah, I look at the degree that I accomplished and all of the incredible kidney weeks that I've been a part of. And yeah, I'm just kind of proud of all of it.
Well, we always end our podcast by asking who should be our next guest. And what should we ask that person?
I had to put some thought into this for you, but I interact a lot with one of my CEM teachers. So he taught a couple of the courses for CEM. He leads one of the most fantastic, interesting lives personally and professionally. So he's the VP of sales, I believe, for T3, and they're a general service contractor. His name is Matt Kalb, and he, I think, just taught a bunch of CEM courses in Malaysia and did like spent I think like 2 weeks scuba diving in Thailand. And whether you're asking him about his personal life or his professional life, he's just a fascinating individual with a lot of really quality insight. So probably him.
Okay, I'll reach out to him.
Yeah, you
Anything
should.
else you would like to share with us about, your career, your views on the industry?
I don't think so. I mean, we just talked about a whole lot. So nothing is popping up for me.
Well, this was great. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. This was awesome.